least 44 people are dead today, including 14 soldiers, after al-Qaeda fighters raided a military barracks in Yemen. The attack occurred in the pre-dawn hours in the southern city of Loder and prompted local tribesmen to take up arms alongside the military to beat back the militants. Today's attack came after a weekend in which 24 suspected al-Qaeda members had been killed in airstrikes. This is the second time in less than a month that we've brought Yemen to your attention. In March, we reported on the murder of American schoolteacher Joel Shrum by al-Qaeda-linked militants in the city of Taiz. Southern Yemen has become a hotbed of militant activity since the resignation of longtime President Ali Abdullah Saleh left a power vacuum in the nation. Since that time, the United States has been assisting the embattled Yemeni government in hunting down militants within its borders using drone attacks. Despite the assistance, Yemen's al-Qaeda movement has expanded its control in the past year, leading some there to consider opening a dialogue with the terror network. So what exactly are we seeing in Yemen and the Muslim world right now? Is this the future of America's efforts in the region, and is this a war America is likely to win? Here to help us answer that question is former U.S. Navy SEAL and author of The Red Circle, My Life in the Navy SEAL Sniper Corps and How I Trained America's Deadliest Marksman. His name is Brandon Webb. Brandon, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
happy
to be here.
First, Buck, I want to turn to you if you could set up this whole situation that we're seeing unfolding in Yemen.
I think Yemen is symptomatic of broader trends in the region, which is the U.S. having to deal with or not deal with what we call small wars or insurgencies. We have a fantastic expert here to talk about how we can deal with those things. So we're just going to set up the problem really quickly, take a look at what we're dealing with. So, what you have here, if you were to just take a look at the map of just one section of the world, of course, the Middle East, we've got small wars, insurgencies, either al-Qaeda aligned or Islamist insurgencies non-aligned with al-Qaeda all across the region, and we have a U.S. presence drawing down in Iraq and, of course, Afghanistan. In Algeria right now, al-Qaeda and the Islamic Maghreb, formerly known as the Group for Preaching in Combat, Salafist Group for Preaching in Combat, they continue to engage in terrorist attacks there. In Libya, of course, fragile. Right now you have militias squaring off against each other. Some people are referring to it as Mogadishu on the Mediterranean in the making. In the Sudan, North and South Sudan, the new nation, they're still fighting each other. There's still bombing raids. There's still shooting going on. Small wars all across there. Of course, Gaza and the Sinai has been left open in the post-Mubarak era, and Gaza continues to be Hamasistan. Rockets can be rained into Israel on any given day, and often are. Yemen and Somalia, two key nodes in al-Qaeda's global network now. Yemen, al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. In Somalia, it's al-Shabaab. There you have Islamist militants that are actually trying to, in one case, run a country, and another trying to overthrow the government in that country. We see violent insurgency going on there. Of course, Syria continues to be a major hotbed. No one's sure what's going to happen. Will a peace deal go forth? And there's talk about Islamist jihadist insurgents being part of the anti-Assad resistance. Iraq, we're drawing down still an active Sunni insurgency there and concern over Shia militias. And of course, then we move to Afghanistan and Pakistan. We are drawing down in 2014. The Taliban still is a major problem, and in Pakistan, we have a variety of groups that are allowing sanctuary to move back into Afghanistan and cause attacks. So what you see here across the board are either low to high level insurgencies, Islamist, often al-Qaeda aligned, and these are not all countries that we're going to be able to do major military incursions into. So that brings us to the options for small wars, special operations forces. And for that, we have a fantastic expert to lead us through. How much should we be doing here, Brandon? What can we be doing? And do you think we are doing enough?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, you can break it down to just fundamentals. We're fighting the symptoms of radical Islam when we should be, that has to take place, right? You go after and deal with the symptoms of this radical Islam, but getting to the root causes of, what social and political environments produce the leaders of al-Qaeda and LET today. So, I think when you look at it from that simple of a view, and, is the war winnable by the U.S.? I think absolutely, but it takes a global team and a unified strategy.
So it's a broad-based ideological battle. We have to be coming at this from all fronts, diplomatic as well as whatever military special operations are involved, everything across the board. Media, right? We have to get everything involved? Is that kind of the approach?
Right now we're just focused on symptoms when we really should focus on the root causes, and go after the 5-year-old that's being, educated in these extreme mosques and grows into the 21-year-old extremist. Yeah.
I think I've tried to make the point on this show that a lot of this, in addition to this sort of cultural, the cultural conditions that create this, is also just chaos. And anytime there's chaos, this is a real draw for Al-Qaeda. And I've tried to politicize that by suggesting, okay, that's why we need our forces to be on the ground in these chaotic situations that are really just going to attract this kind of extremism and terrorism. What kind of policies would you suggest, whether it's Yemen or Afghanistan or Libya, for the U.S. to get a hold on this before the chaos has already won?
Well, I mean, from a policy perspective, I think you really have to develop a strategy and stick to it. And I think you have a situation where you have multiple agencies, maybe not as unified or communicating with each other, and then you end up with a situation where you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. You look at the fact that MEK in Iran is doing its thing over there, and the fact that it's on the State Department's terror.
Protecting them in Iraq, right? We're protecting the camp, the camp. So they're a designated terrorist group, and we are providing security for them for complicated political reasons.
Yeah, and I did a post on my site, SOFREP.com, yesterday, and it essentially the U.S. has trained MEK on U.S. soil in Nevada. So,
as a general principle, do you think that SOF is well known? For Green Berets are known for training indigenous forces to basically fight the battles themselves. Yeah. It seems like in this country, I think we'd all agree that there's at least a sense that people want less involvement in some of these countries. The troops are coming home, and Afghanistan right now is considered to be unpopular with 75% of Americans, for example. Do you think that is, on the purely military, on sort of the more kinetic side, although I know this is training, not kinetic, on the military side, is training indigenous forces the best single way that we can try to help more democratic regimes come into play here, more stability and a better outcome? Short of putting boots on the ground, which actually raised.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think training has a big part, but still it doesn't address the root cause. The root causes of any extreme group, or that you're dealing with this radical Islamist movement, is getting to what creates the next UBL of the world. And you can't, by the time these people reach the mid-20s, they're committed to a cause, and it's pretty hard to unwind it. So educating this younger group and getting in there and addressing healthcare, education, as well as the training issue.
That sounds like nation building.
Well, call it what you want.
Yeah.
But the problem is, I talked about it last show, is when we pull out of Afghanistan, we're going to be measured by, okay, what did we really accomplish, in the country? And I'd put that question back to you guys, like what have we accomplished when we pull out of Afghanistan?
So let me ask you this then. Part of the reason for going into Iraq was to address these root causes, and I worked for the Senate Majority Leader when it was in Republican hands, and I wrote many speeches about bringing the light of democracy, being a light to the Middle East, and sort of inculcating these types of values. And a lot of Americans feel that it was a big fat failure, that we did not succeed in that, in that goal and in that mission. What is your view?
I wouldn't call it a failure, like a total failure, but it takes commitment to really affect that long-term change. So, and that's not you can't do it in a decade, and so, and I think, a big issue that we are dealing with now is you run into a situation where if I asked everyone at this table what the U.S.'s ultimate strategic objective in Afghanistan was, I'd probably get, 5 or 6 different answers. So that's an issue.
Probably get one from all of them. I don't know.
Yeah, well, there you go. And and that's like putting football players on a field,
right,
and they don't know which way to run to score a touchdown. It's not a good situation.
You've written a book, which I'm told is awesome, by the way. And this you talk about being a SEAL. You talk about training as a sniper. Do you get into some of the work abroad at all with indigenous forces, or is it mostly just training U.S. Navy SEALs here? Or what are some of the key things you wanted to hit on from in here as to what needs to kind of continue on in the Special Forces community, or Special Operations, I should say?
Well, you know, I'm really proud to be a part of the Special Operations community. And for me, the book it's a memoir. You know, it's got I love the title, and there's a lot more meaning to that in the book. And you know, it's got a cool picture of a scary guy on the front of it. But it's a memoir, and you know, to me, it represents a lot of lessons learned about my time in the SEAL community. And you know, I wrote it primarily. You know, I was inspired by the last lecture. You know, with the professor at Carnegie Mellon.
Do we have about the right number of SEALs, do you think? I mean, if you were sitting down with a policymaker right now, if you were talking to the chairman of the JCS, would you say, which we are not, but I'm just saying, you know, would you say that numbers of SOF right now, numbers of SEALs, basically what we should be having, or do you think that, you know, this needs to be, considering the mission set we've outlaid, which is all these countries in tumult, all these chaos, should we have more?
Well, you know, I think we have enough, you know, not just SEALs, but Special Operations in general. But the problem is these guys are completely just wasted. You know, the deployment cycles, their families are suffering, and, you know, you get a situation where they're deploying overseas in the very beginning of the war on terror, and the ROEs are not what they are today. I mean, today you have morale issues because guys are coming back from operations, and there's a JAG lawyer right there, and get ready to just take a statement and figure out, you know, what's going on. Guys are getting put on reports. So it's you know, it's a complicated situation, but I think the numbers are pretty close to where they should be. But we need to really start taking care
Scale down the deployment. The deployments are too much right now.
Yeah,
fair to say?
Yeah, and I think Admiral McCraven and his team they really recognizing that they need to have a preservation of force. It's in the SOCOM strategy for this year, so they know it's an issue and are dealing with it.
I'm sorry. Where are you from, Brandon?
Originally, actually, I was born in Canada.
Canada, really?
Yeah.
What
Get
made
out!
you-
Get out of here right now!
Canadians in the military.
Hey, I served this
What made you want to join the SEALs? That's why I asked. I want to know why you joined the SEALs.
Well, I have a crazy childhood. I moved from Canada at a young age to California.
There it is,
And,
California.
Yeah, so California on the coast. I grew up around boats, worked on boats.
Right.
My parents loved to sail. We took, you know, long story, but we ended up taking this big sailing trip, and I was 15 going on 16, and my dad and I were just butting heads, and I made it to Tahiti on a 47-foot catch, and he said it was time to get off the boat.
Really?
So I left home at 16, and, you know, been on my own ever since. And for me, you know, to answer your question, I was, you know, SEAL, growing up working in the water and growing up on a recreational dive boat. You know, I was exposed to the community. It just represented a challenge and a group of special individuals that I wanted to belong
No, they're
to.
telling us to wrap, but these are the questions I want to ask you about how you got here. So I guess I'm going to have to buy the book,
Are
right?
going to buy this book
Right.
right here. It's Brandon Webb's The Red Circle, My Life in the Navy SEAL Sniper Corps and How I Trained America's Deadliest Marksman. Brandon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for your
thanks, guys.
service, Brandon.
Absolutely.
We all thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Next up, Scott Baker brings us the top